We have Rupinder Singh among us and who is all set to be interrogated as he has renamed himself. So, Rupinder Singh, I'll start from the very basic questions first and then we'll move on the ladder. In the meanwhile, a word to all the audience members as well that if at all you feel like asking any questions, please do drop in those questions on the chat window. I would like you to put those questions on the chat window and I will facilitate those questions and ask those questions to Rupinder instead of asking you to come on stage uh, and asking the questions. I hope it is fine with everyone. So my question, the first question to you, Rupinder, is what do you really mean by evaluations and what importance it has in Toastmasters?
I think evaluation is a very underrated skill as far as Toastmasters or even real life is concerned. And especially when you look at the mission statement of a Toastmasters club, which says that we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self confidence and personal growth. Now, if you look at it, this entire mission statement is oriented towards feedback. Why? Because feedback is one thing that people actually deserve, but people also fear because they feel that they might hear something that they do not want to. Conveying a feedback in a way that a person looks forward to it, looks forward to their points of improvement, looks where they went right, how they can do better the next time. It is not only a skill, it is an art, it is a science. And I don't think any other platform prepares us better for that art, that science, that skill than Toastmasters does. And to think that all of it is enshrined in that mission statement, which is why, as Sergeant at Arms, I take particular care to read that mission statement out word by word because it has a very deep meaning. So, to answer your question, I believe that evaluations are, in essence, the soul of a Toastmasters meeting because they tell us the direction that we have to take for our next step of improvement. You have to unmute yourself. Feedback.
Thank you very much, Rupinder, for that interesting aspect about evaluations and uh, taking it as an art and science. And what better platform than Toastmasters, where we can learn all these nuggets and implement them in our journey of becoming a better communicator. Next question, Rupinder. We know now that we do evaluate speeches in Toastmasters and as an evaluator, and even in contests, we have to evaluate a speech and give an evaluation speech for ourselves. So, is there a way how to prepare for an evaluation speech? Is there any prerequisites which need to be done, or is it very impromptu just by listening to the speech, you just make notes and speak it out? How do you prepare for an evaluation speech, particularly for a person who is very new to Toastmasters?
Okay, that's actually a very good question. A lot of it is spontaneous, I'll give you that, because you don't know what is the speech this person is going to deliver. For example, in my semifinals, I got a very humorous speech, and in my finals, I got an inspirational speech. So you don't have control over that. However, there are things that you have control over. For example, the speech topic. A speech topic like hurrah. Now, already the speech topic is creating intrigue, which means that you are interested. You've got your first commendation there already. Or, for that matter, the name of the person, the speech topic, how did they open, what were the three stories that they used, how did they close, did the opening match the closing or not, uh, how was the body language, did they maintain eye contact, did they smile or not while they were looking at the camera, were the facial expressions matching. Now, these are very common questions, and if you don't get anything out of the content, you can at least answer these questions as yes and no and formulate your commendations and recommendations. I mean, that is the approach that I follow. Another thing that I do is that I divide my page into four quadrants. So, this side I've got commendations, this side I've got recommendations, then again commendations, and the last quadrant is for summary. I follow a 2C, 2R, 2C approach. If needed, I'll probably have more commendations and recommendations. But for each commendation, I try to have an observation, then an example of how they did it, and finally the impact that it had on me. Again, for recommendations, I follow the same pattern, but I also add a fourth element, that is the way to improve or how to improve. So I write them down. Now, worst case, what is going to happen is I will not understand a word of the speech. But I can understand the vocal variety, I can understand body language, I can understand facial expressions, I can see how the title relates to the topic, what was the message, I can check out the opening, the body, the conclusion, the stories that were told in the body. And that should give me two commendations, two recommendations, and two commendations, even if I do not follow the content. And then there is a summary. Summary is nothing but just taking out the action points from recommendations and what impact it left you in commendations, and just putting them together. One thing that I would like to call out is be very particular about your transitions. So if you're going to give your first set of recommendations, say that this is what I liked, and let me tell you where we can improve, so that the judges know that now you're transitioning into the recommendations. This is where I believe that you scored more. This is the part of the speech that I will remember the most. Now you've come back to the commendations, and then summarizing or summing up or putting it all together, some phrase like that, so that the judges know that the transitions have occurred. Because there are separate marks for recommendations and how you closed and your summary. There are separate marks for that. I'm talking specifically from a contest perspective. Hope that answers your question, Nimit.
Yes, Rupinder, it answers a couple of questions, in fact, which were in line next. But thanks for sharing with us the basic blueprint, or you can say the template of uh, typical evaluation speech, and how can we uh, ev- can we still give commendations, recommendations, and summarizing it at the end, even if we are not following the content of the speech. So very well said, Rupinder, and I hope all of the audience members are making notes of these wisdom nuggets. And I see in the meanwhile there is a question on the chat window to me, and this is very close to the point which you were making about the impact on the evaluator from the speaker. The question says that if I tell the speaker the speech made me feel a certain way, that is not evaluation but rather just a feedback. So how do you balance between feedback and evaluation? First of all, let us start with the basic difference between feedback and evaluation, and how do we balance that while giving
I'll go a step
it
further.
to the
That
speaker?
I'll go a step further. That's not even feedback. That's just an opinion. It's simply an opinion that your speech made me feel a certain way. And a lot of feedback actually stops at opinion. To me, a feedback, if it is positive, needs to have three components. One is your opinion, which obviously everyone has. Like I say, that every living being on this planet has an opinion. Then you need to give them an example that this is where I validate my opinion. This is how I validated my opinion. And then you talk about the impact that it had on you. Now, for example, it could be that Nitin was the speaker and he has excellent vocal variety, and I could go with Nitin. I've become a fan of your vocal variety. Now that's an observation, right? On its own, positive. Nitin will feel pleased. How about if I follow it up with Nitin? I particularly loved the way you used a different voice for father, a different voice for the son. Now Nitin knows what I'm talking about and he will appreciate the fact that I've actually listened to his speech. And last but not the least, I close with Nitin. I wish I could have a vocal variety like that. Now what I've done is that I've told him the value that his speech is giving me. It's like going to a restaurant and somebody asks you to write a review. You end up writing wonderful food. Not bad. I mean, it's a good recommendation, but that's something that everybody is going to write. I particularly like the lentil soup. Now you're telling them that what they are good at. I would love to have the recipe for it. Now, what you're telling them is that this is the value that is being given. And most of the times, we just stop at observation. When it comes to recommendations, they are more starkly vague. That's how I would put it. I did not like this presentation. I am not sure if I like this. I think we can do better. That's it. It stops. It's just an observation. That's it. We stop at the observation. The person needs to know a particular example. So if you are telling me that I am not being serious as a Toastmaster, better follow it up with an example. You haven't come for the last 4 meetings. In fact, in the last meeting, you signed up for a role and you did not turn up. You backed out. Now give me the impact. Every time you do that, I have to go find another role player. The way forward. How do you, can you ensure that next time you keep me reliably informed, that you are reliably present? The way forward. We often stop just at the observation. Now, if in our feedback we can tell them how we can improve or how they helped us improve, that feedback is going to go on to another level, and that feedback is going to stay with you for a very long time. And that is where we actually stop, unfortunately. We just stop at observation. And that is an essential part of feedback. A feedback is supposed to tell you where you can improve. Evaluation, on the other hand, is feedback plus there is a level of measure to it. We say that, okay, you did this great, can be done even better if you try to incorporate this. You made good eye contact, can be even better if you accompanied it with a smile. Evaluation. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks for clarifying the difference between feedback and rather opinion feedback and evaluation. And we for sure understand now that evaluation carries a certain value, certain impact, which we are giving back to the speaker so that he can actually use it for future. Next, I move on, Rupinder. While we give the evaluations, but is it also important to be an experienced speaker before we give evaluations, or is it not required at all? I mean, we can just go by the formula which you are sharing with us and be a good evaluator, or you would suggest that we also be a very good speaker to be a good evaluator?
I would disagree that you have to be a good speaker to be a good evaluator. I personally know of sports coaches who were not very good sports persons, who were not very skilled at the particular sport, but went on to be some very good sport coaches. Okay, uh, you might not be a very good speaker, you might be a very good observer. And if you can translate that observation or that opinion into meaningful feedback, then you are actually helping the person. The only place where you're going to struggle is showing them how to do it. So, for example, I have a very stoic face expression. I have difficulty smiling in front of the camera. And yet I tell people that, look, you need to smile in front of the camera. If they ask me to show them how to smile, I'll probably give the weirdest smile of them all, and I'll probably end up upsetting more, disorienting them more than helping them out. But my intent is correct. My intent is to tell them that, look, compliment it with your smile. So, a lot of times, you don't have to be a good speaker, you just have to be a good observer. Case in point, whenever a new member joins or whenever I get a new mentee, I never tell them to prepare for their icebreaker, I never tell them to prepare for a speech. I first tell them to do timer, then I tell them to do our counter, then grammarian, then table topic master, and then finally a Toastmaster of the day. It's after these 5 roles that I tell them that you should give your icebreaker. What are they doing all this while? They are observing the other speakers and they are writing their own icebreaker speech. So it is very much possible to be a good evaluator without being a good speaker. Of course, if you are a good speaker, it gives you that stage experience that you can leverage in your evaluation. Having said that, I don't see any reason why you cannot be a good evaluator without being a good speaker.
Thanks, Rupinder. I think that clarifies, and I hope that gives the answer to the question. Most definitely, I do agree personally that you just need a better observation skills, or you see film critics, right, who themselves have never made a movie, but they are critics for some reason. But yeah, thanks for that answer. I observe a barrage of questions on the chat window, but for now, I'll just take up slowly, and I would request everyone to be patient. I will take up most of the questions which you are coming up with. Thank you for that overwhelming response. If I quickly move on to the evaluation contest for a moment, and the evaluation contest is all about many contestants contesting to be the best evaluator while they are evaluating one common speech, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there are many contestants, and particularly in today's scenario where we have these contests online, there is a concept of breakout rooms where um, apart from the first contestant, the others have to wait in the breakout room after making their evaluation notes. Let's give you a situation. If you are the 11th contestant, that is, you have to evaluate the speech. You are coming at the last and you have to evaluate the speech after 10 contestants. And in the breakout room, there is a discussion going on any random topic which you can think of. And does it distract you by any chance, or what is going on in your mind? Because you have to be the best on that day. You are competing in a contest, but what is going on in your mind despite the distractions all around, and how do you compose yourself just before your own performance?
Here is the thing. I believe that, and I've been a contestant number 11 in an 11 contestant contest. I've also been a sergeant at arms in an evaluation speech contest. And my chief judge at that time was the late distinguished Toastmaster Pinaki Das, one of the best chief judges I've ever had. He gave me a very interesting insight into the evaluation speech contest. If you are contestant number one, then you are not spending time in the waiting room, which means you're straight away giving your evaluation. But the contestant number two has got that 5 minute gap. It's going to take about 5 minutes to call the next contestant in, during which they can prepare their evaluation apart from what they've written on paper. Similarly, contestant number three will have 10 minutes and four will have 15 minutes. Go on. So if you go on, theoretically, I should have 50 minutes of preparation time. But Pinaki said it is my job as a sergeant at arms to keep all of the contestants occupied in anything other than preparing their evaluations. Why? Because it becomes unfair to the people going before me that I have more time to prepare. Having said that, no one's a saint, and I'm not a saint. I will be lying if I say that the thought did not cross my mind or I did not think about it. What I did do is I kept on talking to contestants. Every time the thought came to my head, I would keep on talking to the contestants. I'm doing this with an intent to be fair to my fellow contestants, right? So, what goes on in the head? Different people, different approaches. My approach is to try not to think too much about the contest, because I've written down what I've written down. I am going to refer to my notes when I'm going to deliver my evaluations. There are people I've seen who literally meditate, who so they're told to hold the papers like this and they'll sit down and they'll be meditating. I don't know if they're preparing for contest, preparing a better evaluation or not. But I would say that I simply say that they are not. I assume good intent automatically. I have seen people who want to, you know, who mute themselves, and they are saying something. And when we ask them to unmute, it turns out that they're chanting or they're saying their prayers. Different people, different approaches. My sense is that as long as you are not preparing additional content while you are waiting in the waiting room, you are fine. At the end of the day, you have only you to answer yourself to. But think about the person who's going first. That person did not get the chance to prepare as much as did. So that becomes a challenge.
Thank you, Rupinder, for that brilliant answer, showing all the 4 core values of Toastmasters in that as well. Uh, Definitely, all the positions in the contest have their own pros and cons, but it is all to you how you are preparing your in your mind about that particular evaluation. Okay, talking about the evaluation itself, when you are preparing, when you are taking notes, if you observe that there are so many points to which I can speak upon. I have collated around 5 or 6 commendations and 5 or 6 recommendations, but you have a limited time, right? You have to time your speech so as to qualify. So you have to condense them. Perhaps you have to prioritize your points as well. So is there a particular criteria how you filter or you prioritize the commendations and recommendations which you are actually going to speak on?
I do. I do. I
And
go with the. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, complete your question.
yes, and how do you do? Is there a way to is there a way would probably guide others also to how to select which one is the best one? Yeah.
So I follow a 2C, 2R, 2C, and summary approach. Two commentations, two recommendations, two commentations, and then summary. Sometimes I vary it. Sometimes I give 3 commendations in the beginning and then two recommendations finally, closing with 2 commendations. Others they follow a 4C, 3R approach. 4 commendations followed by 3 recommendations and then a summary. And none of them is wrong per se. But how do you choose? I choose the CRC approach, that is 2C, 2R, 2C, or basically CRC, because my first 2 commendations will be centered around content. That this is what I liked about your content. I liked your speech title. I liked the way you organized your story. I liked this particular sentence that you said, blah blah blah. So I'll center my first set of commendations around content. For recommendations, I'll choose one that you can action upon immediately. Like literally in the next meeting, you can start taking action and you will see immediate results. And then I take a recommendation that is a long term recommendation. So this you can keep on practicing as you go along and you will see results at some point in time. My final set of commendations is centered around the uh, non-content areas like body language or for that matter vocal variety, things like that. And then of course there is the summary, which I've told you. I just take out the good the action points from the recommendations followed by the impact points from the commendations. Hope that answers your question, Nimit. And Nimit has decided to abandon us. Oh no, he's back. You have to unmute for that to work. You know that, right? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Apologies for that. Yes, very well said, Rupinder, once again. And I hope that answers the question as to how to really structure our evaluation speech and how to prioritize our bullet points which we have made. But then talking about these bullet points itself, is summary a part of the later commendation, or it comes after CRC? If it comes later, then what should be the content of the summary? So question on the summary: is it a comment, is it an extension of the commendation itself, or is it in addition to the CRC, which we have already spoken
It is
about?
it is always going to be a separate part from the CRC or CR approach, whatever you're taking. The reason for that is that one, you want to summarize, and two, summary carries an additional 15 points on the judge's ballot. If you do not summarize, you're losing out on those 15 marks. Now, if you think that you can win a contest with minus 15 marks, well, all the best to you. I know that I cannot. So, which is why summary becomes an important aspect. Even if we don't look at it from a content perspective, I believe that a person needs to know at least the action points to improve and the impact that they had on their audience. They need to know the value that they gave and the value that they can get if they implement the action points. So, even if we are in a non contest or a non Toastmasters environment, I believe that a summary is very important. Like, was it Aristotle who said, "Tell them what you want to tell them what you want to tell them, and finally tell them what you just told them." That last line, "Tell them what you just told them," is a summary. They need to know that.
Okay, another follow-up question on summary is if you can just help with an example and what exactly should be the content of the summary, uh, what to highlight and what not to highlight.
Sure. So let's assume that I gave a commendation around the content, the way the stories were told. So my first commendation is that the person and that my learning from that is I wish I could be a storyteller like you. That is the gist of my first commendation. Second, I wish I could structure content like you. So that is my second second commendation. When it comes to recommendation, I tell them to maybe use a post-it note which says "Look here and smile," right? And that will help them to look at the camera and smile always. Let's just go with one recommendation for the sake of brevity. And my last commendation is around how they used vocal variety, how they sang a song, and that I wish I could sing like them. I would go with I would go with so Nimit, look here and smile. Use the post-it, and you will see yourself smiling, becoming more confident. That's the first point of my summary. I loved your vocal variety. I wish I could sing like you. I absolutely love the way you structure your speech. I have to learn that from you. And loved how you, I love the fact that you are a storyteller. And I always say that the world needs storytellers. So much to learn from you. Right? Now, I've given that person a point of improvement and I have followed it up with what I liked about the speech. Overall, I'm leaving the person in a state of mind where they think that they can come back and they can make a difference. That makes sense? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. And now we know that how to summarize our evaluations for sure. And talking about the structure of the evaluation, we have talked a lot. But is there um in your mind that how to divide and how much time to devote to each and every section as well, because ultimately you have 3 minutes to speak on and you have a time limit, right? You cannot just go overboard and on and on. So how do you divide your speech so that you are well qualified on time and at the same time you pass the complete message which you intend to?
Okay, I work my way backwards on this. I've got a time of 3 minutes 30 seconds. And I know that the red card is going to come up at 3 minutes. So I decide that between 2 minutes 45 seconds to 2 minutes 59 seconds, I need to start my summary. So Broadly, I need to start my summary when the before the red card comes up. Now, if you work your way backwards, if I work my way backwards, overall what it comes out to, I need to be done with my introduction and the first set of recommendations by the first minute itself. That is where it gets tricky. Once you've got that 1 minute nailed down, rest of it becomes a cakewalk. Because now you've got markers. At 2 minutes, you are going to get the yellow card. By 2 minutes, at 2 minutes you're going to get the green card. By the time you get the green card, you should be done with your recommendations, and you should have started with your final set of commendations. And as soon as the yellow card comes up, you know that you need to start wrapping up your final set of commendations and begin with the summary. If you can do that around the 2 minute 45-second mark, you will be able to finish your evaluation somewhere around 3 minutes 20 or 3 minutes 25. That's how I go about it. Now, if you were doing this using the commendation, recommendation, and summary part, again, in the last 45 seconds, you need to start summarizing. So 2 minutes 45 seconds is your cutoff time. You need to start summarizing at that point, which means that if you are giving four commendations, then you've got something like 1.5 minutes to do that. And your three recommendations should be done by the 2 minute 30 seconds or 2 minute 45 seconds mark. And then you begin with your summary. I hope that helps.
Definitely, it helps me because sometimes I tend to just go overboard with the commendations and not able to devote that much of time to recommendations, which usually fetch more marks and have more value to provide to the speaker. Thank you, and I hope it answers that question to the person who was asking me that. And next is, we sometimes come across a near perfect speaker, isn't it? Uh, Many of us may be experts while evaluating. They have been doing this from a long time, but new Toastmasters like myself included, what if I am asked to evaluate a speech who is given by an expert speaker, a professional speaker, and his speech too is near perfect, and you are unable to point out a single point of recommendation. You perhaps are getting overwhelmed by that excellent speech, but you have to nitpick recommendations just to give that element of recommendations, or you don't. What do you do in that situation, Rupinder?
First, let us learn how to prevent such situation. So there are speeches that are so good that you can't find a point of recommendations. Then there are speeches that are cases where you can't find a commendation. There are speeches like that as well. What do you do in such a case? For practicing, what I do is that I go through the World Championship of Public Speaking speeches, because to me they are like the pinnacle of excellence. I try to find recommendations within them. I go through those speeches with the specific purpose of finding recommendations. I am not looking for commendations because I know I'll have a ton of commendations there. For commendations, I listen to some speeches that people would never listen to. Okay, uh, stand-up comedies with very dirty jokes, things that would never be allowed in a Toastmasters meeting or would cause people to leave a Toastmasters meeting. I listen to them and I try to find commendations from within those. Now that's how you practice. How about the case where you are unfortunate enough? You are there, the speech is going on, it's a perfect speech, and you have absolutely zero idea as to what to do with that speech. I would say keep a stock commendation or a stock recommendation. Your stock recommendation is you had a wonderful speech. How can you make the speech better? My recommendation is, let this not be your best speech ever. Let your next speech be even better than this one. So tacitly, you have conceded that you don't have a recommendation, but at the same time, you have given them a recommendation. Okay? The other way around, and that happens more often than not, you do not have a commendation. Well, this is not that difficult. Understand that this person had the courage to come up on stage and deliver a speech. I've had speakers who've come up on stage, stayed quiet for 3 minutes, and then started talking, break down, literally cry on the stage, see their way through to the red card, and stop speaking and run off as soon as they see the as soon as they see the green card. But that very act of standing up on stage is itself worthy of a commendation. So I call them out for that. Hope that answers your question. Summarily, evaluate very good speeches for recommendations. Evaluate speeches that make your blood curl for commendations. That's the practice part. If everything else fails, tell them that their next speech has to be better than this one for recommendation, and commend them for having the courage to come up on stage and speak for commendations. Hope that answers.
That's a very good idea, very good approach, which we all can take the practice itself and have some stock commendations and recommendations despite the situation we land up in. Uh, thank you, Rupinder. And now we would go run through the very last few questions to you. Uh, Now, if I talk about not the speaker or the speech, but the environment and the background around him. It could be his virtual background. It could be his attire, how he dressed is in, and how is he carrying it, or could be any other, which is any other non-speech related factor. So, do you comment on that as an evaluator, and do how do you restrict yourself? Do you feel like you have to point that out or not if it is not relevant and if it is not contributing to his speech, or how is it? And same goes to you as well. While you are giving an evaluation, do you look at him on the camera? Do you look at that particular speaker in his eye while giving the evaluation, or you are mostly referring to your notes and expect him to just listen to you? What is the ideal way around this?
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking me whether I maintain eye contact with the speaker or not. Number one, and number two, whether I comment on how the speaker is looking or not. Well, I definitely comment on how the speaker is looking. If it is complimenting their speech, I call it out in the commendations. If if it does not complement the speech, if it goes against the speech, then I call it out in the recommendations. A specific example: people are using virtual backgrounds, and their hands, they're getting disappeared in the virtual background. Okay, why does my hand not disappear when I want it to disappear and I have a virtual background? Okay, I'll never understand this, but you get my point. If the hand is disappearing, it's a point of recommendation, and I will call it out. If I feel that a better dress could have been worn, for example, right now I'm wearing a white shirt. If I was wearing a darker shirt, the contrast would be better given that I have a light background. I will call it out. I One particular recommendation that I am quite fond of is, some people have this habit of speaking without speaking. So they'll speak with actions, right? So, for example, a speaker could say, "You have to go," and they'll not say the word "up." Okay, by all means, commendation because they used a verbal gesture. Think of the visually challenged audience. They don't know what you are doing, so you have to think of them as well. So that is, I do call out such things, and I think you should call out such things. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Rupinder. That answers that question. One last question, which I am taking from the audience, and then I have one question from my side as well. Tell us about, very quickly, tell us about the most difficult evaluation you have ever had to give.
Oh, that's actually easy. It was, I will not tell you the club. I will tell you that it was in person. And it was about knowing your leadership style. And this person had not taken the assessment. And for 5 to 7 minutes, this person stood on stage and spoke about leadership styles. And none of the leadership styles that he spoke about were making any sense. And I had this rather enviable task that I had to give this person a commendation. Although every nerve, every sinew, every part of my body was saying, yell at this person because he's wasted 5 to 7 minutes of the audience. Only I know the measure of self control it took for me to find commendations for the speaker. In the recommendation, I just told him one thing that look, you spoke for about 7 minutes. There are 25 people in the room. You have effectively, when you said that I am not prepared, because he began his speech with I am not prepared, you made people sit through 175 minutes. That's close to 3 hours. And people get fired if they waste 30 minutes. So I would suggest next time, please come prepared. That was my most difficult evaluation to date.
Thanks for sharing that story, that instance with us. Uh, we've had we've talked at length about how to give evaluations and all about evaluations, but sparing a word about the speaker who is receiving evaluations. What if we are in his shoes? Tell us about how to receive feedback. What is the best way? What should be our attitude towards receiving feedback? What if you are the speaker and listening carefully to your own evaluator? How do you take that in stride? Yes, please. The way to receive feedback.
That's a very good question, actually. If you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have probably said that even if and that if I disagree with the feedback, I'll probably disregard. But now what I do is I carry a pencil and a notepad, and I just simply take notes. I shut out everything else. Whatever they are saying, I am writing it down, note after note after note after note, whether I like it or not. Now, what I tell myself is that it's not me who's receiving this feedback, it is this pencil that is receiving this feedback. And now the pencil started disappearing. Wow. When I did not want it to disappear, it did not. Okay, but that's beside the point. I am writing it down. I'm saying that it is this pencil that is receiving this feedback, and I keep on writing down all the feedback. After that, I go through all of the feedback myself, and I ask myself, does this even make sense? I mean, is it because of the reasons that this person was saying, or is it because I was facing some difficulty? Having said that, always understand, if one person is having problem with you, then there are going to be more people that are having problem with you, and you cannot ignore them. So you need to become solution oriented as to what can I do so that this does not occur again. Or at the very least, you could say it in your speech that, look, I know this is going to be a problem. For example, many times I tell people that I do not know how to smile. So don't think if I'm not smiling, I'm not acknowledging what you're saying. It's just that I don't know that. So I do, you know, when I'm receiving feedback, I simply write down everything that I'm getting. Hope that answers your question.
That answers the question, Rupinder. Thank you very much for all the wisdom nuggets you had for us all. And I'm sure we are also making notes like you do while listening to your own evaluations. And it was pleasure to get all those answers from you, Rupinder, having you today. And I know that you have other commitments and you would be leaving the room. We will allow you to go. Thank you very much for your time
Thank you.
and sharing all that wisdom with us. And I'm apologize to people who may have unanswered questions, but I'll request Rupinder to please take them up offline as well. And I request all of you to keep having these interesting questions which you shared with us and reach out to us to the Spearhead Toastmasters or to Rupinder later as well. Thank you very much. And
Thank you, Nimit. Before I go, just one message to everyone. This year, I saw a markedly less participation in contests as compared to the preceding years. It is disappointing, and I have only one thing to say to you, that you should contest. And I'll tell you why you should contest. See, a contest is not a measure of excellence. A contest is actually a service, particularly in a Toastmasters environment. Because in a contest, you're going to be at your best. And you're probably, set up to deliver your best speech ever. Even if it is not as well prepared as you would like it to be, you're still giving your best speech out there, which means that you're in a position to impact at least one person sitting in that audience. And if that one person decides to adopt a different behavior, to become a better person, or find an answer that they have been looking for, you have scored not in terms of excellence, but you've definitely scored in terms of service. Why is the contest important? Evaluation speech, we speak for maximum 3 minutes 30 seconds. That is 210 seconds. But in those 210 seconds, everything has to come right. Your vocal variety, your body language, your eye contact, your smile, your content, most of all your technical glitches, they have to be absent. It takes all of that. It takes all of that to come together for those 210 seconds. But in those 210 seconds, you will have more impact on people than you will have in 210 hours telling them how to do something. So, for their sake, please contest. I hope to see you in the next contest next year. Thank you.
Yes, we can all applaud for distinguished Toastmaster Rupinder Singh, and thank you for that beautiful message in the end. And I would encourage all of you to provide your feedbacks and not evaluation, but yes, definitely feedback to the speaker we had today. Uh, Either on this chat, but I will prefer if you can share that feedback to Rupinder on his personal WhatsApp or email to him, so that, and one takeaway from this entire session, that would be a great feedback in itself for Rupinder. So thank you very much, and we will continue with our next set of